Curtain rises. A lavish Victorian drawing room. A crinoline gown hangs nearby. Lady Prudence Featherstone enters with a confident swish of her skirts, fan in hand, surveying the audience with a sly smile. Ah, welcome. What a fine day to explore a matter most delicate. Yes, do come in closer. You see, I have a confession to make. It's something we Victorian ladies rarely spoke of, but thought about, constantly, every hour. Sometimes every minute. The question is this. How exactly did we use the toilet while dressed like an over-upholstered lampshade? Yes, that. The unspeakable reality hidden beneath silks and smiles. You think history is all war and monarchy and marriage contracts. But true endurance? That, my dear audience, lived underneath the skirts. Now let us begin where every scandal begins, in the wardrobe. We wore an ensemble that would terrify modern practicality. A linen chemise to protect our modesty, of course. Over that, a corset, laced so tightly it shifted our organs into diplomatic negotiations. Then came the petticoats. One, sometimes two. And then, the piece de resistance, the crinoline, a great dome of steel or whalebone, making our hips wider than a doorframe, and granting us the grace of a barge reversing through a ballroom. Add another overskirt, perhaps a bustle to emphasize our backsides. Finally, the outer gown meticulously stitched, weighed and embroidered. A lady might carry 30 pounds of fabric, and be expected to faint gracefully at the whiff of impropriety. Now, as for the undergarments, here lies a secret so clever it deserves a medal. Drawers, we called them, open-crotch, split down the center like a pomegranate. Ingenious. Shocked. Don't be. The Victorians were nothing if not discreetly practical. You see, there was no simply going to the loo. No rest stops. No stalls. Public toilets? Scandalous and largely for men. A woman, regardless of her station, was meant to hold it until a proper opportunity emerged. And often, that could take hours. In the home, we had chamber pots, modestly decorated, sometimes gilded, tucked under beds or in ornate cabinets. When nature whispered, one would lift the skirts. Yes, gather them with both hands, sometimes needing assistance, and hover above the pot like a poised gargoyle, praying the crinoline didn't tip it. We developed an uncanny skill for balance and aim. It was less about elegance and more about survival. If you were fortunate enough to have a maid, she would assist. Not in the act, mind you, but in managing the layers. She'd hold them back as one might part the Red Sea. The relationship between lady and maid was often forged through such intimate logistics. But at a ball, a dinner party, an opera, no chamber pot in sight. What then? The Bourdaloue, a charming little invention named after a Jesuit priest. Poor man, I'm sure he had no idea. A porcelain or pewter device, shaped to slide between the legs, small enough to carry in one's reticule, elegant enough to pass as a perfume bottle, if you squinted. With practice, a lady could relieve herself discreetly behind a curtain or in a private box, all while standing. Yes, we peed standing up, in a hoop skirt, during social engagements. You clap for astronauts, clap for us, and carriages. Don't get me started on the 5-hour ride to Bath. We couldn't stop along the roadside like men, that would be indecent. So we mastered the fine art of urinating while in motion, in a bouncing coach with only a Bourdaloue and sheer will. To miss the vessel was to risk disaster. Mind you, this was not a concern only for the aristocracy. Working women had their own challenges. Factories with no toilets, shared outhouses filled with filth, or crude buckets behind curtains. They too wore split drawers. Not for luxury, but necessity. Imagine braving a public privy in January, skirts bundled under one arm, praying the seat wasn't iced over. That, dear guests, is courage. And what of hygiene? Did we have toilet paper? Oh, how sweet. No, not in the modern sense. Some used cloths, reused and rinsed. The less fortunate made do with scraps of newspaper, or even corn husks. Scented handkerchiefs and lavender sachets masked the odor of reality, but we were acutely aware of our humanity. Do you know how long a corset could compress the bowels? Days. The sheer agony of constipation was something we bore with noble silence. And why? For appearances. Because God forbid one be caught relieving herself in a visible or audible manner. It was said a true lady perspired, never sweated. She glowed, she did not stink. And when she passed gas, heaven forbid, it was always blamed on the dog. There were, of course, rules. One must never refer to bodily functions. A lady did not urinate or defecate. She retired. She refreshed. She was indisposed. We had a thesaurus of euphemism and a blacklist of shame. And yet, our very lives revolved around managing these bodily truths. We danced and flirted while calculating when we last relieved ourselves. We endured childbirth with no plumbing. We rode horses in side saddle, walked miles in the rain, all while negotiating with our bladders. Imagine every street, every drawing room, every social call, layered with that silent pressure. And still we smiled. Now you may ask, what did this teach us? It taught us strength. Not the visible, flex your muscles kind, but quiet, relentless, private strength. The kind that allows a woman to hold court at tea, with a full bladder, a steel cage around her legs, and the knowledge that the only pot is 3 floors away. It taught us resilience. The ability to adapt, to innovate. We bent the rules, slipped chamber pots under our crinolines, and found ways to survive in systems never designed for comfort. And it taught us humor. Oh yes, because when you've tipped over a Bourdaloue on a velvet cushion in the Earl of Leicester's music room, and still managed to curtsy afterward, you learn to laugh, quietly of course. So no, we were not fragile flowers. We were engineers of anatomy, architects of the discreet. We peed in teacups and no one knew. That is power. And now, my dear friends, the next time you wrestle with a jumpsuit in a cafe restroom, or grumble at a broken stall lock, think of us. Think of the woman in the corset and crinoline, maneuvering with poise, always smiling, always holding it in. Not just urine, but anger, frustration, genius, resistance, hope, all of it, held beneath layers of satin, stitched shut by propriety, and yet, somehow, leaking out through laughter, wit, and survival. Now, if you'll pardon me, I do believe I must retire to refresh. Curtain falls as she lifts her skirt slightly, turns with a wink, and exits.